I'm Ethan. I'm 32, and I've always had a complicated relationship with my extended family, particularly my mom's side. You know the type, the side that holds grudges like Olympic records, plays favorites like it's a full-time job, and makes you feel like an outsider even when you're standing right in the middle of the room. I stopped expecting anything different years ago, but that doesn't mean it stopped hurting. Growing up, I was the quiet cousin. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because no one ever really listened. Family gatherings were basically live-action reminders that I didn't quite fit the mold. I wasn't athletic like my cousin Derek, or extroverted like my cousin Haley, or Instagram perfect like my cousin Brooke. But I was reliable. I showed up. I remembered birthdays. And once I got my life together and started making decent money running my own web development company, I even started helping out here and there. Paid for Uncle Frank's roof repair. Helped Aunt Diane's kid with tuition for a semester. Gifted generously at every wedding, birthday, baby shower, even if the invites always came late or came with an unspoken expectation that I wouldn't really show up. I'd been out of touch with most of them for about 2 years, not because of any big falling out, but because life just kept pulling me in other directions. Business had taken off. I'd moved across the country, and truthfully, it was easier not to chase people who never made room for you. So when I got a formal wedding invitation from my cousin Brooke, yes, that Brooke, I was surprised. Genuinely. The last time we spoke was a brief, awkward hug at her graduation party where I was mostly treated like an afterthought while her friends and more fun cousins dominated the spotlight. Still, I RSVP'd. Booked a flight. Reserved a nice hotel. I even called my mom to let her know I'd be attending, and she acted pleasantly surprised in that weird, clipped tone she always uses when she doesn't know how to process something. Oh, wow, that's great, Ethan. That'll be nice. I didn't just plan to attend. I wanted to be generous, supportive, kind. I was doing well, and even though our relationship wasn't close, I remembered Brooke as a girl who once let me hide in her room when our uncle brought his scary dog to a 4th of July party. It was a small thing, but it stuck with me. So I wrote a check for $7,500, more than I'd ever given at a wedding, and tucked it into a discreet envelope with a little note. For the next chapter of your story. Wishing you love and calm, Ethan. I arrived at the venue early, as I usually do. I'm a planner like that. It was a charming vineyard-style setup, outdoor seating, rustic lanterns, the whole Pinterest dream. I checked in at the greeting table where two 20-something girls, probably bridesmaids, were helping guests find their seats. One of them glanced at my name tag and immediately looked confused. Oh, Ethan? Yeah, I said, smiling politely. I don't see you on the seating chart. That caught me off guard. Really? I RSVP'd a while ago. She tilted her head, apologetic, but not really. We had to make a lot of last-minute adjustments. Only close family is seated. I am close family, I said, more surprised than annoyed at this point. She gave me that tight, PR smile people give when they're uncomfortable. You can still attend the ceremony, of course. There's some standing room toward the back. I just stared at her. It wasn't even anger I felt at first. It was more like embarrassment wrapped in disappointment. I looked around. There were rows and rows of white chairs, neatly aligned under a canopy, each one with name cards clipped on. I saw familiar names, people I knew hadn't seen Brooke in years. Plus ones. Distant friends. Even Brooke's old high school volleyball coach was seated, and I was told to stand. I gave a polite nod and walked away. Not toward the back. Not to complain. I just stepped around to the side of the courtyard and stood for a few minutes under the shade of a tree, watching guests settle into their seats and take selfies and fix their hair. I'm not dramatic by nature. I don't cause scenes. But in that moment, something in me shifted. I glanced toward the reception area where the gift table was already set up under a white tent. A mix of pastel-colored envelopes, fancy wrapped boxes, and a big card box decorated in gold glitter. I walked over casually, like I belonged there, because I did. Nobody paid much attention. Everyone was still preoccupied with finding their seats and snapping Instagram stories. I found my envelope, the one with my initials written in black ink, and picked it up. Slipped it into the inside pocket of my jacket. Then, still calm, I turned and began walking toward the parking lot. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe nothing. Maybe just to leave quietly and never speak to any of them again. But about 5 minutes later, just as I reached my rental car and was fumbling with the keys, I heard someone shouting my name. Ethan. Ethan. Wait. It was my Aunt Laura, Brooke's mom, practically jogging in heels across the gravel. Her husband, My Uncle Jerry followed behind her with a red face and stiff posture, like he was holding back from yelling. "What are you doing?" Aunt Laura snapped as she caught up to me. "You just walked out? Are you serious?" I turned, expression neutral. I wasn't seated. I figured that meant I wasn't really welcome. She blinked like I just slapped her. "That's ridiculous. There were some last-minute changes, that's all. We didn't have room for everyone." I pulled the envelope halfway out of my jacket pocket and showed her just enough for her to recognize the handwriting. Good thing I caught this before someone else did. Uncle Jerry finally chimed in. "You're making this about you, Ethan. Today is about Brooke." I laughed quietly. "Yeah, and I wanted to help make it a beautiful start. But you didn't even leave me a seat." Then from behind them, I heard another voice. "Ethan?" It was Brooke. She wasn't running, but she was walking quickly, bouquet in hand, hair done up, looking every bit the Pinterest bride. The look on her face was somewhere between confusion and dawning horror. "I thought you weren't coming," she said breathlessly. I didn't know you were even here. I RSVP'd. "I know, but Mom said you probably wouldn't show. I didn't see your name on the seating chart this morning. I figured maybe something came up." Aunt Laura jumped in. "Well, he's clearly making a scene now." I finally felt the heat in my chest rise. "You humiliated me. Told me there wasn't room at the wedding for your own family, and you want to accuse me of making a scene because I took back a gift you didn't even know you were getting?" Brooke looked stunned. "What gift?" I held up the envelope just slightly. "Doesn't matter now." Her eyes widened. She clearly understood then, or at least suspected. Aunt Laura stepped forward like she wanted to snatch it from me, but I stepped back, calm, firm. "I've done nothing but give to this family for years," I said. "But apparently, generosity only counts if you're loud about it. Or fun. Or fit the mold." Brooke opened her mouth, but whatever she was going to say got swallowed by the sound of her dad muttering, "Unbelievable, like I was the villain here." I turned, opened my car door, and paused just long enough to see the next wave of guests arriving, people smiling, laughing, clueless about the small storm unraveling at the edge of the parking lot. And then I drove away. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because later that night, I got a text, and it changed everything. The text came just after midnight. I was already in bed at the hotel, not even planning to check my phone until the next morning. But something, maybe instinct, made me reach for it. It was from Brooke. "Brooke, Ethan, can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. I'd expected something like this. The wheels were turning the second I left. And I knew that envelope, that $7,500 gesture of goodwill, suddenly meant a whole lot more once it wasn't theirs anymore. A minute later, she sent another. "Brooke, I didn't know what Mom was doing. I swear. Please let me explain." And just like that, I was right back in the emotional tug-of-war I'd been dragged into my entire life. The version of me that wanted peace, that craved belonging, that still held onto those childhood memories of hiding from fireworks in her room, that version wanted to believe her. But another part of me, the part that walked out calmly after being told I wasn't close family, that part was tired. And it had finally found its voice. I didn't reply. Not that night. I set my phone down, stared at the ceiling, and thought about every moment I'd let things slide. Every subtle insult I'd laughed off. Every backhanded compliment from family members who only remembered my name when they needed tech help or a checkbook. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen more messages. 2 from Brooke. 1 from Aunt Laura. That one just said, "Call me now." 5 from my mom. 3 from my Uncle Jerry, voicemails I didn't bother opening, and even 1 from Derek, the golden child cousin who hadn't spoken to me in years. "Derek, hey man, heard about the wedding. Can you just let it go? Don't ruin Brooke's day over something petty." Petty. That word sat heavy on my chest. It was always the go-to label they used when someone finally pushed back. When someone didn't just smile and nod and absorb the blow. I took a long shower, packed up my suitcase, and checked out of the hotel. I had no intention of going to the post-wedding brunch. Not after that. But curiosity tugged at me. I had to see how far this circus was willing to go. So I drove to the cafe where the brunch was being held. I didn't go inside. Just parked across the street and watched. Through the window, I could see Aunt Laura in full theatrical meltdown mode, waving her hands while talking to a group of relatives. My mom sat nearby, lips pursed, clearly trying to play neutral but definitely not defending me. Brooke was at the far end of the table, looking more tired than happy, scrolling through her phone. 10 minutes later, I watched Uncle Jerry step outside and take a phone call. He paced back and forth, agitated, hands on his hips. Then he turned suddenly and looked across the street, right at me. For a moment, I thought he might come over. But he didn't. Just stared. Then turned and walked back inside. I drove off. I spent the next few days ignoring every message. I didn't feel angry anymore. Just done. There was something freeing about it. For once, they could sit with the silence. Let it echo. By the time the weekend ended, the tone of the messages had changed. Aunt Laura stopped demanding and started pleading. Brooke asked again if I'd meet with her, just once. Even my mom texted, "They didn't mean to hurt you, Ethan. They were just overwhelmed." But then, 3 days later, I got a different kind of message. It was a group text sent from my Uncle Jerry to several family members, including me, though I don't think he meant to include my number. Uncle Jerry. Can't believe Ethan would pull something like this. Disrespectful, selfish, and trying to punish Brooke on her big day. He's not even married. Doesn't know what it's like to plan a wedding. He was always jealous of this family. That was the moment the flicker of hesitation inside me died. Because that's what it always came back to: blame. Projection. Gaslighting. Every slight against me rewritten as an overreaction. Every hurt I felt labeled as bitterness. So I finally replied. Me. Not jealous. Just tired of pretending. Tired of showing up for people who wouldn't walk across the room for me, let alone set a chair aside. Tell Brooke I wish her the best. As for the rest of you, don't worry. You won't hear from me again. I hit send. Blocked half the group. Then I made one more stop. I went to the bank. I'd already deposited the $7,500 check back into my account, but this time, I decided to do something else with it. Something quiet. Personal. Just for me. I opened a new savings account. Labeled it Self-Respect Fund. Transferred every cent into it. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like someone who finally chose himself. But that wasn't the last I heard from them. Because just 1 week later, Brooke showed up, uninvited, at my office. She showed up around lunchtime. I was in the middle of debugging a back-end issue for one of my bigger clients, sipping lukewarm coffee, when I saw her reflection in the glass wall next to my desk. I turned, thinking it might be a delivery or a client dropping by without notice, but there she was. Brooke. My cousin. The bride. Still in her honeymoon makeup, or at least what looked like the same kind of careful contour and lashes. Her hair tied back in a tight ponytail, designer bag slung over one shoulder. She looked like she hadn't slept much, eyes a little red, skin a little too pale. I was so thrown off that I didn't even say anything at first. "Hey," she said, half smiling like we were old friends who'd just lost touch. I blinked. "Brooke, I was hoping I could talk to you. Just for a minute." She glanced around the office. "Is this okay?" I should have said no. I should have said I was busy, which technically I was. But something about the way she stood there, rigid, holding her breath, made me nod instead. I motioned toward the conference room at the end of the hallway. We sat in silence for a few seconds. She kept fidgeting with the strap of her bag while I sat across from her, arms crossed, waiting. "I'm not here to fight," she started. "Didn't think you were," I said flatly. She bit her lip. I didn't know. About the check. About what Mom did. She didn't tell me until after the ceremony that you showed up and left. She didn't tell you I was uninvited either? She said the seating got messed up. That you didn't confirm until late. That's a lie, I said quietly. Brooke looked down. I figured. I leaned forward slightly. You figured, but still didn't reach out until now? I was overwhelmed. Her voice cracked. Just a little. It was my wedding, Ethan. There were so many moving parts, and I trusted my mom to handle the seating chart. I didn't think. She told me you probably wouldn't come, and That's always the story, isn't it? I interrupted. Someone else said something. Someone else assumed. Someone else made the call. And I'm just supposed to roll with it and smile. Brooke didn't say anything for a moment. I continued. Do you know what it felt like to stand there and be told there was no seat for me? Not even a folding chair in the back? I was treated like a party crasher. And all while I had a $7,500 gift sitting on the table. I didn't know, she said again, softer this time. I looked at her. But do you get it now? She nodded, almost to herself. I do. I really do. We sat in silence for a while after that. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly. Just heavy. Eventually, she said, I came here to say I'm sorry. I looked her in the eyes. Are you? Yes. For not questioning what I was told. For not checking the list myself. For letting you walk away without even realizing it. That's on me. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to forgive her on the spot, just to make it easier for both of us. But another part, the part that had been overlooked and dismissed and treated like an afterthought for years, wasn't ready to let go that easily. She kept going. My mom is furious, by the way. Said you embarrassed the family. Said you humiliated her. I gave a dry laugh. Pretty bold to call it humiliation when I just left quietly. She said you made her look bad. That people started asking why you left. And what did you say? Brooke looked me dead in the eye. I said maybe they should be asking why you weren't given a seat in the first place. That, I'll admit, caught me off guard. She lost it, Brooke added, almost smirking. Said you were always too sensitive and that you never tried to fit in. But that's not true, is it? No, I said. It's not. Another pause. Brooke exhaled slowly. I don't know how to fix this. I can't undo what happened, but I don't want it to stay like this. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since that disastrous wedding, I saw something different, not guilt, exactly, but understanding. Awareness. You can't fix the past, I said, but you can start by being honest about it. Don't sweep it under the rug like everyone else always does. She nodded. I won't. I already told my mom I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. And if she tries to play it off at family dinner this weekend, I'm calling her out. I raised an eyebrow. Family dinner? Brooke hesitated. Yeah, it's at our place. First one since the wedding. She's hosting. Everyone's coming. Everyone. She gave me a look. Yeah, that includes you. I leaned back. That's a bold assumption. It's not an assumption, she said. It's an invitation. A real one. You don't have to come. I get it if you don't. But I want you there. I stayed quiet. Brooke stood up, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Think about it. You're not obligated. But I hope you show up. For you, not for anyone else. With that, she left. Quietly, without any fanfare. I sat there long after she was gone, staring at the glass wall. My coffee had gone cold. My code editor sat idle. And my mind raced with thoughts about all the birthdays I'd missed, the awkward holidays, the texts that never came, the chairs that were always just out of space. And now, there was one waiting. But something didn't sit right. Because while Brooke seemed sincere, and her apology sounded genuine, my gut was still telling me that this dinner, it wasn't going to be simple. Aunt Laura wasn't the type to take embarrassment lightly. And if Brooke really planned to call her out in front of the whole family, that dinner wasn't just going to be a reunion. It was going to be war. I decided to go. Not because I wanted some dramatic showdown, or because I needed an apology from Aunt Laura. I didn't expect one. But after everything, after being shoved aside, talked about, labeled sensitive, and practically erased from my own family, I was tired of letting other people write my story. If this dinner was going to be the battlefield, then fine. But I wasn't walking in to fight. I was walking in to finish something. The evening of the dinner, I wore what I always wore when I needed confidence, a crisp navy jacket, white shirt, no tie. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. Not enough to seem rude, just enough to avoid the awkward greetings at the door. Brooke opened it with a small smile, gave me a quiet, thanks for coming, and let me inside. Their house was packed. The whole inner circle was there. Uncle Jerry, who avoided eye contact. Derek, the cousin who once shoved me out of a photo so his new girlfriend could stand closer to Grandma. Even Aunt Diane, who hadn't spoken to me since I ruined Thanksgiving 5 years ago by bringing gluten-free stuffing. And then there was Aunt Laura. She stood in the kitchen, stirring something in a pot like she was starring in a cooking show, loud and overanimated. Ethan, she said when she saw me. Well, decided to grace us with your presence. There it was. The opener. A jab dressed as a joke. I smiled politely. Glad to be here. She narrowed her eyes slightly, realizing I wasn't going to bite. Hope there's no gift table this time, she added with a little laugh, and a few others chuckled uncomfortably. I just shrugged. Good thing I brought an appetite instead. Brooke caught my eye from across the room. She saw what just happened. She gave me a small nod, as if to say, brace yourself. We sat down to eat. The table was long and loud, conversations bouncing across it. People avoiding looking directly at me, except for Brooke, who made a point of asking about my work, my place in Seattle, even my dog. She treated me like I mattered, like I existed. It was the first time in years I felt like someone wasn't just pretending for show. Then Aunt Laura clinked her glass. I just want to say, she began, rising slightly, that despite some recent misunderstandings, I'm so grateful we could all be together tonight as a family. There was an awkward pause. I saw Brooke freeze slightly. And then Aunt Laura kept going. We've had some rough patches, of course. Some people have taken things a little too personally. She shot a glance my way, as if to test me. But at the end of the day, what matters is that we stick together, even when some of us don't always make it easy. I took a slow breath. Brooke stood up. No, Mom. The room fell quiet. No, she repeated, firmer. We're not doing that. Not tonight. Aunt Laura blinked. Excuse me. You don't get to spin this like Ethan overreacted. You left him off the seating chart. You lied and said he didn't RSVP. You told me he probably wouldn't show because he never comes to anything. Then when he did show up, when he tried to be generous, you had him stand in the back like a stranger. And when he quietly left, you spent the whole honeymoon trashing him behind his back. Dead silence. Derek put his fork down slowly. Aunt Diane suddenly found the ceiling very interesting. Uncle Jerry cleared his throat like he wanted to say something but realized nothing he could say would help. I don't want an apology, Brooke said, looking directly at me. You already tried to do the right thing. I didn't. I stayed quiet because I was scared of making waves. But I'm not staying quiet anymore. Aunt Laura's voice cracked. So you're taking his side? No, Brooke said calmly. I'm finally taking the truth's side. Laura scoffed, looked around for support, and found none. Even Uncle Jerry just looked down at his plate. She gave a little huff and sat down, muttering something about being disrespected in her own home. But no one backed her up. No one comforted her. And in that moment, I realized something. The spell was breaking. The years of backhanded comments, guilt trips, unspoken rules about who mattered and who didn't, all of it was unraveling. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, breathing deeply, feeling something shift inside me. Later that night, as people began trickling out and offering awkward goodbyes, Brooke pulled me aside by the door. Thank you for coming, she said, and for not walking out again. I wouldn't have blamed you if you had. I'm glad I stayed, I admitted. She looked relieved. You think you'll come to the next one? Let's take it one dinner at a time, I said with a smirk. She laughed. Fair. I walked out to my car feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because the family was fixed, it wasn't. Not because Aunt Laura would suddenly treat me like a favorite, she wouldn't. But because, for once, I had been seen, heard, defended. I had nothing left to prove. And as I drove off, I didn't feel like the outsider anymore. I felt like someone who had finally, truly, taken his seat at the table on his terms.